Hello. It's July 10th, about 9 a.m. where I am. Today, just had some thoughts on, emerging topics for me, but also really felt compelled to read some particularly moving passages from some of my favorite books. And I know it's been a while since I've had a seizure and really have talked about epilepsy-related subjects. So for at least, some relation, I will be reading this extremely messed up Dostoyevsky, 3 short novels. Has Notes from Underground, Poor People, and Friend of the Family. I've read 2 of those 3. I'll be reading from the first one today. I haven't read Friend of the Family. Poor People had me crying. Notes from Underground just had me really laughing and relating. And as a kid, a few years ago, just really related to that main character. It's very funny because the character who he's writing about is, first person, but a 24-year-old. So when I was 24 3 years ago. But yes, planned on reading that as my before, and then I had a bit of kind of after reading. All will be very short. The second of that would be Bell Hooks, All About Love. Wonderful, short read, but just have 1 page bookmarked here that I would like to read about. Today, really the nature of the discussion was going to be, well, a few major themes. Volunteering, independence, community, sobriety, structure, and trying new things. So, really to start out, I've been opposed to community for a very long time. Kind of gathered from my background videos that you may or may not have seen, and you may just relate. This is the general sentiment. I'm not really a community-driven person. I like to be alone. That's kind of how I identify myself. I don't think that will ever change. I feel comfortable being alone. I feel free. All these good feelings. But, sometimes, even for people that like to be alone, being alone can be wrapped up in some negative, negative, spiteful types of feelings. I think a really good example of that can be found in Notes from Underground. Who knows when this one was written? I think mid-1800s. No, I'm just playing. I think it was like the early 19. Okay, yeah, it was in the... No way. Yeah, I think he wrote it in the 60s? That doesn't make sense. I guess so. Yeah, I'm not a real Dostoyevsky, buff. I guess I'm not really a big reader at all, but, I'm getting there. So just a couple of passages I've selected to read, both from Notes from Underground, that I found humorous and really addicting whenever I was a kid and just reflecting. Okay. Very, very funny. I, for instance, have a great deal of amour propre. I am as suspicious and as prone to take offense as a humpback or a dwarf. But upon my word, I have had moments where if I had to be slapped in the face, I should perhaps have been positively glad of it. I say in earnest that I should have probably been able to discover even in that a particular sort of enjoyment. The enjoyment, of course, of despair. But in despair, there are the most intense enjoyments, especially when one is very acutely conscious of the hopelessness of one's position. And when one is slapped in the face, why then the consciousness of being rushed into a pulp would positively overwhelm one. The worst of it is, look at it which way one will, it still turns out that I was always the most to blame in everything. And what is most humiliating of all, to blame for no fault of my own, so to say, though through laws of nature. In the first place, to blame me because I am cleverer than any of the people surrounding me. I've always considered myself cleverer than any of the people surrounding me, and sometimes, would you believe it, have been positively ashamed of it. At any rate, I have all my life, as it were, turned my eyes away and never could look people straight in the face. To blame finally because even if I had magnanimity, I know this word, magnanimous, I should only have had more suffering from the sense of its uselessness. I should have certainly never been able to do anything from being magnanimous. Neither to forgive for my assailant would perhaps slap me from the laws of nature. And one cannot forgive the laws of nature nor to forget, for even if it were owing to the laws of nature, it is insulting all the same. Finally, even if I had wanted anything but to be magnanimous, had desired, on the contrary, to revenge myself on my assailant, I could not have revenged myself on anyone for anything, because I should certainly never have made up my mind to do anything, even if I had been able to. Why should I not have made up my mind? About that in particular, I want to say a few words. With people who know how to revenge themselves and stand up for themselves in general, how is it done? Why, when they are possessed, let us suppose, by the feeling of revenge, then for the time being, there's nothing else but that feeling in their whole being. Such a gentleman simply dashes straight for his object like an infuriated bull with his horns down, and nothing but a wall will stop him. By the way, facing the wall, such gentlemen, that is, the direct persons and men of action, are genuinely nondesplussed. For them, a wall is not an evasion. As for us people who think, and consequently do nothing, it is not an excuse for turning aside, an excuse for which we are always very glad, though we scarcely believe in it ourselves as a rule. No, they are nonplussed in all sincerity. The wall, for them, something tranquilizing. The wall has for them something tranquilizing, morally soothing, final, maybe even mysterious. But of the wall later. Well, such a direct person I regard as the real normal man, as his tender mother nature wished to see him when she graciously brought him into being on the earth. I envy such a man till I'm green in the face. He's stupid. I'm not disputing that, but perhaps the normal man should be stupid. How do you know? Perhaps it is very beautiful, in fact. And I am the more persuaded of that suspicion, if one can call it so, by the fact that if you can take, for instance, the antithesis, guys, I'm sorry, of a normal man, that is the man of acute consciousness who has come, of course, not out of the lap of nature, but out of a retort. This is almost mysticism, gentlemen, but I suspect this too. This retort-made man is sometimes so nonplussed in the presence of his antithesis that with all his exaggerated consciousness, he genuinely thinks of himself as a mouse and not a man. It may be acutely a conscious mouse, yet it is a mouse, while the other is a man, and therefore, etc., etc. And the worst, he himself, his very own self, looks at himself as a mouse. No one asks him to do so, and that's an important point. So I'm going to pause there, and thank you for enduring. You know, I have some difficulties kind of reading aloud. You could kind of see what I was talking about in the beginning there, going back and forth between, you know, I'm just fine alone, other people have their own ways and I have mine, but also definitely a scorned feeling, like, okay, I'm outside of the world, even though I'm different, and it's not even though, it's definitely because I am different, I have no choice but to be green with envy and trapped away. That is really, I was laughing quite a lot reading this, and I recommend it if you haven't read it quite yet. Those kinds of thoughts have kept me from pushing myself out into the world, and I've noticed, with sobriety, it's a lot easier to not be sober if you have nothing going for you. And if you're selfish and self-involved, the only things you have going for you are going to be things that serve you. So with it, volunteering, signing yourself on a line to be accountable to other people is very scary, but it's actually quite helpful because it's trying something new with no stakes. You're not being paid to do it. You don't have to be the very, very best that you may be. If you're a very perfectionist, high-functioning person, you set the guardrails. You're practicing how to have relationships, and there's a motive behind it. You know what I mean? If you're not someone who likes to just hang out and socialize for the sake of socializing, and I'm not that person. I'm not gonna say many of my friends, but honestly, of the friends I do have, they prefer to, socialize for the sake of socialization, which for me, I've never been the type. It's not, unless I'm drinking, it's not really what I like to do. I'd like to get together and do something active or creative or listen to music kind of in silence. And that's just what's more comfortable to me, low stakes involvement. So you can create that in volunteering. You set the stakes, you set the boundaries. I just feel like it's really changed my life in a short amount of time. You know what I mean? I haven't been doing it all that much, but for all that long, but it's still a big change. It's changed the way that I work and the way that I think about my time. You know what I mean? So for All About Love, this is going to be in the chapter of 8, Community Loving Communion. And I'm starting a little bit inside of, hey, Terry, what are you doing? My cat's put his wet nose in my book and now it's all wet. Man, you trying to read that too? Okay. No friend or lover, no husband or wife, no community or commune will be able to put to rest our deepest cravings for unity and wholeness. And this is Nowen, Nouwen, in the book Henry Nouwen, theologian, from the book Reaching Out. He suggests we put those feelings to rest by embracing our solitude, by allowing the divine spirit to reveal itself there. Difficult road is the road of conversion. The conversion from loneliness into solitude. Instead of running away from our loneliness and trying to forget or deny it, we have to protect it and turn it into fruitful solitude. Loneliness is painful, solitude is peaceful. Loneliness makes us cling to others in desperation. Solitude allows us to respect others in their uniqueness and create community. When children are taught to enjoy quiet time, to be alone with their thoughts and reveries, they carry the skill into adulthood. Individuals, young and old, striving to overcome fears of being alone, often choose meditation practice as a way to embrace solitude. Learning how to sit in stillness and quietude can be the first step in knowing comfort in aloneness. Here we go. Moving from solitude into community heightens our capacity for fellowship with one another. Through fellowship, we learn how to serve one another. And service is another dimension of communal love. At the end of her autobiography, The Wheel of Life, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross confesses, this is quite lovely. I can assure you, the greatest rewards in your whole life will come from opening your heart to those in need. The greatest blessings always come from helping. Women have been and are the world's greatest teachers about the meaning of service. We publicly honor the memory of exceptional individuals like Mother Teresa, who have made a vocation of service, but there are women everyone knows whose identities of the world will never be publicly recognized as those who serve with patience, grace, and love. all of us can learn from the example of these caring women. So pause there, probably wrap up. Yeah, that book is a wonderful, wonderful read. And definitely I feel like I'm in that transition between solitude and community, and it's a big part of it is you have to discover who you are, because just throwing yourself into any old community will feel foreign if it's not something that you have chosen as an act of your self-determination and your self-respect, choosing something you genuinely want to do, and then with every day doing it the way that you feel safest and comfortable doing so will increase that self-trust. Now, am I totally sober? So happy? Woo! Love to spend all my time volunteering on top of the full-time job I have? No. I do love to volunteer and I do love my job, but am I happy all the time? Certainly not. That's never a goal of mine, but it's to fill up my time so that I don't focus on happiness, which will always come. You know what I mean? It's okay to focus on it for a bit, but you shouldn't really fixate on that happiness or that sadness that you experience. It's about living life while you have a chance to, remove that fear, of, I think I have a fear that if I'm not ruminating on my emotions, something will get past me. I got to live as if I were an NPC. NPCs have no metacognition, unless they're like these new AI-driven NPCs. NPCs, they used to just say whatever the game static code would tell it to say. Now they're running off of these AI algorithms. NPCs are like humans now. No, I'm just kidding. But be like an original NPC, like a GTA NPC. You always are focused on doing. You say the same general stuff to get by. Usually something ridiculous. I can't think of anything right now. I'm playing San Andreas. But don't think too hard about it. Do before thinking, if it's something that you've planned to do. And if you're just sitting around thinking all day, you gotta do. I mean, I'm certainly the worst person to be giving that advice. I love to just sit around and brood, and not do. So for me, doing something is actually very novel. But that's my update. Cheers to that. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good weekend.